Hi, I'm Ben. I work for the Learning Clinic. We're an organization that develops software for the NHS, mainly in trying to capture information about patients, store them in a localized database at the hospital. And my work is trying to give predictive analysis on what might happen to that patient. A bit of work I'm going to talk about here is something that came on into my head was, well, what about disaster situations in a hospital? Can we actually look at winter pressures? Can we actually model how a system is going to evolve based on information we have about people in the hospital? So patients, nurses, doctors, operations workers, all of that. And try and understand what might happen in a hospital based on those few parameters. Some of the work kind of came to a model where we're trying to understand a lot of complex bits of information. So on patients, there's lots of different ways you can break up the types of patients that come into a hospital by age, by gender, by the kind of illness they have, why they're coming in, whether they're an emergency, whether you're going in for an elective surgery, whether you're coming in with a broken toe. For some unknown reason into the hospital. So these were all questions that came up, and the work I do looks at trying to take large amounts of data and try and see if there's any bits of understanding between the different elements of that data. So in my perspective here, the information I have is on patients and on the nurses. Everything else I don't know anything about. So what I did was basically put a probability distribution. A likelihood that the doctor would go see the patient. We're hoping that the doctor will go see the patient if they're ill. So the definition is there's a 90% likelihood that the doctor will go see the patient before they get worse. Similarly, on the ops here is the operations team, so the guys who manage the beds, make sure that there is a bed for a patient. So if you go into A&E, you're not stuck in A&E for a long period of time, you get shifted into the hospital, put into a bed and taken care of. And it's kind of understanding that care pathway. And it's quite important in a few of the hospitals that I've been working with to understand how the care pathway is going to work. If you are monitored properly, taken care of, then the likelihood that you can stay in hospital for large periods of time is smaller, and they can check you out, which is a good thing. You don't want to be in an environment of a hospital. It's full of ill people, and you don't want to be. So the work was essentially trying to model these various aspects and come out with an idea of, well, okay, so on a seasonal basis, we know during flu season, the likelihood of elderly people going into hospitals is higher. During the summer season, the likelihood that there's going to be a lot of sports injuries might be higher because you've got a lot of sports going on at that time. And there's going to be people coming in with various broken bones, dislocations, and so on. I can add in prior knowledge, the information that I might have before I start looking at the model, before I start looking at the data. So I've got an obsessive priors on my data. I know that in the hospital, nurses tend, generally, if they have enough nurses in the hospital, are good. They take care of you. They make sure you're okay. They don't let you deteriorate. Same goes for the doctors. But in high-stress situations, what you get is patient comes in and the system breaks down. They can't move the patient around because everything's full and everyone's going, what do I do? So the modeling was to kind of help them go, well, this is an area we know we get stuck on, so let's try and focus on that when this happens. And I used 4 different hospitals to try and do the simulation. And what essentially comes out, and this is very, very early stage, I've not really completed this by the way, is information about the patient, so their heart rate, their blood pressure, and then based on those various parameters, your vital signs, you can predict how quickly you're going to recover. And then based on your cohort, your illness, your kind of likelihood of getting ill, I can also predict if you are recovering, there's a likelihood that you might get ill very quickly at this stage in your stay because you're likely to get a cold because it's in the winter and there's a lot of people with flu in here, and you are susceptible to the flu because I know your kind of patient. So we can start to build those kind of predictions, and the idea was to come up with the missing bits, so the length of stay, the complication, the likelihood of complications, and the fact that you might have come in with a broken arm, but you're in a cardiac ward, so that they don't really know what they're doing half the time, because they're thinking, well, you've got a broken arm, okay, we can all treat you, but you want to have a specialist looking after that area. So the idea was to try and model all those aspects and come out with a solution for these hospitals. And part of the work has been a bit successful, but we're still trying to gather all the various bits of information to tie that together.
Thank you.